Welcome to my podcast. This is a podcast where I'll be teaching you all the systems and strategies you need in creating your visibility so you can turn your passion for coaching into a profitable business. I'm your host, Michelle Quay. I am a visibility coach, content and email marketing strategist, international speaker, and author, as well as the founder of Elevate Life Coaching. Let's just say that I know a few things about overcoming seemingly impossible obstacles in life and in business. I'm on a mission to be the champion that helps you to get to the top of your mountain, one courageous step at a time. Welcome to the show. Today, our guest is David Doerrier, who is a presentation skill expert with years of expertise and passion for seeing others thrive. He is a U.S. Air Force retiree and went on to a highly successful career in instructional design, classroom facilitation, and corporate leadership training. Throughout his time coaching other presenters and trainers, he witnessed the lack of foundation skills needed to make an impactful presentation to the audience. Without proper education on how to engage your audience, you'll end up feeling overwhelmed, and not just yourself, but overwhelming them because the information that you share is just way too much. Now, you don't want to hear me talking all day long. Let's hear from our speaker today, David Doerrier.
Hello, Michelle. Great to be a part of your podcast. I've been following you for quite some time, watching your other podcasts and guests, and it's such an honor to be here today.
Thank you so much, Santa. No, I mean David. I think one of the questions that I had in mind was when I first saw your LinkedIn profile, and I was like thinking, wow, this guy looks like Santa. I wonder if around this time of the season, he's very busy going around and presenting and dressing up in Santa's hat. So what do you do really?
Well, since you brought up Santa, we could talk about that for the entire podcast. But yes, I have been Santa for 30 years. For 28 of those years, I had the designer beard with the straps and the glue and the wig and all of that, mainly because I was in the service, so I couldn't grow a beard. Started this about 3 years ago, or when we first got sequestered with COVID, and the beard came in so much better, and I'm very active as Santa Claus during the season. I love it, and I could talk all day about Santa.
But we don't want to talk about Santa all day because my people are really interested in mastering their presentation skill. How did you go from U.S. Air Force to becoming an expert in helping others to design their presentation?
Well, that's a great question. Part of the reason was I started while I was in the Air Force. I did 10 years active duty and 18 years in the reserves. Along the way, the reason I left active duty was to get to find my fame and fortune in radio broadcasting. Found a lot of the fame, but none of the fortune. So eventually I had to go out and get a real job. I did theater for a number of years. But eventually in 1995, the Air Force Reserves invited me here to Georgia to be an instructor, to teach folks that were coming into the air transportation career field. So that started my journey in training and development 30 years ago in 1995, or about 30 years ago. And then along the way, and then corporate, as you mentioned earlier, I continued as an instructional designer, designing instructional material. And then I was a trainer as well, training a variety of different subjects. And then eventually was training trainers to train, training subject matter experts to be facilitators and workshop leaders and what have you. And I found not only did I love doing it, but I was good at it. I am good at it. I have good stage side manner. People tell me all the time that it can be quite intimidating to get public speaking skills or public speaking training because a lot of people are very sensitive about their current speaking skills and are very sensitive on getting feedback on their speaking skills. But I have found a very calm way of giving my feedback and giving instruction. So how did I go from the military? The military is where my start was, with training, and then eventually into the civilian sector, and now having my own business, presentyourwaytosuccess.com.
There's a couple of things that you just talked about in terms of what you do and how you help others. Can you tell us a little more about instructional design? What does that mean? And how does that apply to our presentation skills?
That's another great question. My instructional design skills help with presentation skills, and I'll explain that. But let me explain what is instructional design. Instructional design is kind of what it sounds like, is designing instructional materials, designing manuals, lesson plans, quick reference cards, videos, e-learning, whatever type of instructional material is required, that would be using an instructional designer to help create. That would be a good idea, because just putting a video together or just turning on the video and just talking, that's not training. That's not engaging your audience. There needs to be an understanding of objectives, of what is the audience looking for? Why does the audience want this? Once the audience receives this information, how can you evaluate whether or not they got it or not? There are some processes that go into designing instructional material. I know that those same principles apply when you're writing a script, or you're writing your script for your video or for your speech or for your presentation.
As you're talking about this, I'm having this mind map in my head, and where I'm looking at, I do courses offer. I design these courses for women coaches who want to learn that, say, presentation skill or public speaking. I teach them how to leverage the power of storytelling so that they can be on a stage and they will be able to have this signature story, that they'll be able to present it, and they'll be able to get more clients out of the fact that they're speaking, they're visible. So if I were to map it out through the instructional design, how would I be able to do that?
First step is always start with your conclusion. What are the objectives? Same thing with writing a speech, that at the end of your training, at the end of your speech, what should people remember the most? What should they take away? Now, in training, my objective as a facilitator or as a trainer is that I need to train this material, and also I need to evaluate whether or not my audience got it, because in corporate, they now need to take these new skills, these new processes, go back to their desk and immediately apply it. So if I was a trainer and just vomiting information to my audience and never evaluating whether they got it or not, they go back to their desk. The expectation is that they're supposed to apply it. They can't, because they didn't understand what I was talking about. But as a trainer, I have to continuously evaluate my audience. So I think I'm getting a little too deep. Number one is you start with your conclusion first. Start with your objectives. What's the objective? Why are we here? What are we doing? When we get to the end, what should your audience know better? Why do they need to know it better? How are you going to evaluate your audience to know whether they got it?
I think a lot of us, we forget, especially coaches, we have this outcome in our mind. I know where I'm going at the end, but I don't have that ability to articulate and to be able to present it in the way that, oh, here's my outcome. And I don't think people think about outcome. A lot of my people will come and they said, well, everybody want different things. This person want apple, that person want oranges. So I really don't know what they want to accomplish. What do I do?
Yes, I hear that all the time. Well, I don't know what they want. I don't know exactly what you said. Half the audience wants this and half the audience wants that. You've got to pick an objective. If the class is on basic PowerPoint and half of your class wants to know basic PowerPoint, but other half of the class says, well, I don't want basic PowerPoint. I want basic Word. Okay, fine. You go to the basic Word class, PowerPoint. You've got to pick an objective. You can't go all over the place. I'm sure that you, your audience, and I have been there. If you've been in a classroom where the instructor is just like a ping pong ball, just all over the place, nothing gets accomplished. So you have to have an objective.
Yeah. So having an objective, and what have you noticed that through your training and through the years that you've been helping trainers to become a trainer, what's been their most frustration? Like, what have you noticed?
The biggest thing that I've noticed, there's a couple of things, but one of them is, and this is not only new trainers, but also experienced trainers, forget that everybody in that audience is different, that everybody in the audience learns differently, learns at their own pace, learns their own way. Where the trainer feels, well, I learned this way, so everybody must learn exactly the same way. So number one is not knowing your audience and not delivering your material in a way that's going to connect to your entire audience. Now, there's a lot more to that. You have experienced people in the audience and you have novices in the audience. So there's certain ways that you have to facilitate to accommodate all that. But number one is know your audience and know that everyone in your audience is different. And then the second one is one of the principles of adult learning is the principle of complexity, where the facilitator comes in. This goes also part of not knowing your audience, where the facilitator, the subject matter expert, has a lot of knowledge about that subject matter. They come into the classroom or on that stage and they talk to their audience as if everyone in the audience is as skilled as they are. And I'm sure you've been there where you're talking over the people's heads.
Yeah.
You've got to know your audience. And the principle of complexity is understanding where your audience is and meet them where they are, and then eventually bring them with you on that journey where you can be more complex.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the big struggle that I had was not knowing that there are people coming into our space at different level of experience. Like you said, there's beginner, there's intermediate, there's more advanced people. And as someone who wasn't very experienced, I mingle everybody together. And like you said, when I present a topic, when I'm talking to the beginner is very different than I would talk to an advanced practitioner. Right. So there was that mixture of it's just like a mud podge that was happening, going on. You talked about engaging and connecting with your audience. How do I do that as someone who's kind of like still fresh and new, who doesn't have a lot of presentation skill experience? How do I connect and engage with my audience?
Great question. So I always talk about three things. I have been evaluating people for a number of years. I've been evaluating people in corporate, evaluating business people, giving speeches, and there are always three things that always come up. Number one is something I've already mentioned. Know your audience. I can't tell you how many times I've evaluated that business person at a networking event is now giving that 5 to 7 minute presentation in front of the networking group, and they're giving that presentation about their business as if they're giving it to other people that are in the same business. So know your audience. Number two is to incorporate stories, relevant, short stories. The story should incorporate three pieces. The three pieces are, number one, what was the problem? So this would be talking about a client that you have. What was the problem that the client was facing? What solution did you provide to that client? And number three, after the client applied the solution, what was the outcome? So far, two things. Number one, you've got to know your audience. Number two, relevant, short stories. And number three, a conclusion. How many times have you heard a speaker get up in front of an audience, gives their presentation, and then adios, later? There's no conclusion. There's no call to action. There's no review. There's nothing. One of the other things is keeping in mind is that 9 times out of 10, your audience is hearing this information for the very first time. You, as the speaker, you know this stuff. You could teach this stuff in your sleep. However, we're hearing it for the first time. So you got to give it to us in little nuggets. And one of the ways to help us to absorb it is to give us a little review at the end and some sort of conclusion. So 3 pieces: know your audience, short stories, and a conclusion.
I love the conclusion part because I think for me, especially, it took me a couple of years to actually learn that, oh, I need a conclusion, not just walking into the room and inspire everybody and then, oh, bye, bye,
Adios.
Felicia. I was leaving a lot of money on the table. And one of the things that you talk about is setting up the stage for sales and setting up the stage for whatever that call to action would be.
Mhm.
And I think that's really powerful and in the way that it helps us as a speaker, as a business owner to actually understand that there's a reason to be on the stage and when you talk.
Mhm.
So I was wondering, since I have you here, I do know that you work one-on-one with clients. I
Mhm.
was wondering if I can pick your brain on how I might be able to better my course in the future. Would you be open to do a demo?
Let's do it.
All right. So, David, I'm struggling with. I have an end product. I know the end result is to help women coaches to have a visible coaching business. And I do that by teaching them how to incorporate the storytelling that you had talked about.
Mhm.
And I do have a course, and the course is a 5-week course. And I walk them through the initial process of branding, storytelling, and marketing. If I were to design a course and be able to teach on this material, how would I go about doing it?
Well, number one, what I had mentioned earlier is what is the objective? So now that someone has completed your 5-week training, what should they know better? What should they be able to do better?
They would be able to have a coaching business that is so visible and that they have the exact marketing strategy. And when they go out into the public, they know exactly what they're selling, what to talk, and how to articulate their service to others.
What value will that have to that new coach? Now that they are visible, now that they know what they want to do, how is that valuable to their coaching business?
Well, so instead of being stuck behind a desk, now they'll be able to actually quit their 9 to 5 job that doesn't
Mhm.
really fulfill them and actually have a profitable business where they can earn the revenue that they want,
Mhm.
make profit out of it, and actually be able to travel everywhere, living that lifestyle that they dream of.
Okay. So that to me sounds like it's the objective. Within 5 weeks, I'm going to get you to be able to leave your full time job and to be successful in your coaching business.
Yes.
There is a lot more to unpack in that, but in the short time that we have, that's the objective. That yes, to be visible, yes, to be successful, those things are important. But how is all of that valuable? How does a coach use that? So, what it is within 5 weeks, I'm going to get you to be able to leave your job, your full time job, and to get you into your successful coaching business. And to do that, I'm going to teach you how to be visible, how to get out there, how to market yourself. Those are all the pieces that have to be in place for you to be able to do this within 5 weeks.
That sounds so easy to do.
Yeah. But again, you're starting with that conclusion first, that the objective is within 5 weeks, you leave your business. So, how do I teach someone to do that? Well, first, I've got to teach them marketing. All right. So, in my mind, what I visualize is a PowerPoint slide. I see a PowerPoint slide that says marketing on it. And now that's the main bullet. Now I see underneath it all these sub bullets that go with marketing. What is it that I have to teach someone that's going to teach them how to be a good marketer?
Okay. I think I got some work to do. One of the struggle that my audience is experiencing is the fact that when we're talking about presentation, it's about standing in front of an audience or being on the camera. They have that step number one, knowing their audience, but they can't even overcome that fear of putting themselves out there.
Mhm.
What do you suggest someone who's right from the beginning of
Mhm.
learning how to present? How does someone overcome that?
Well, number one, if you are nervous, guess what? You're normal. Being nervous is normal. Everybody should get nervous before a presentation. And I feel that if you're not nervous, then something's wrong. Professionals get nervous. I've heard of movie stars and theater stars that throw up before they go up on stage. I'm not certainly comparing myself with the biggest movie stars in the world, but I know that when I was doing theater, there were many nights I was standing backstage waiting to go on stage, and all of a sudden, I can't even think of my first line. It is so overwhelming, but it's all part of practice, 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 practice. Knowing your material, knowing what you're going to talk about, being nervous, it's normal. There are ways to work through it. Change the mindset. I'm not nervous. I am excited to get up in front of this audience and give them or share with them this information. And also, one other thing to keep in mind, in most situations, if not all situations, the only person that feels that they are going to fail is the speaker. Everybody in the audience wants that speaker to be successful.
Wow. I keep so many of the stuff that you just talked about. I can see my own journey, being able to reframe myself, saying, this is exciting. This is not nervous. I'm having this passion. I want to be able to speak to in front of more people. I think one of the struggle that I had was I either didn't know what to talk about, or I knew what I was talking about, but I didn't know how to present it. I didn't know how to articulate it. In your point of view, how important it is to have these fancy slides when we're doing the presentation? Would that help? Would that be something that's suggested? Would that elevate? Would that connect? Would that engage with my audience? Like, what needs to happen?
So you're asking about PowerPoint slides. Is it important to have PowerPoint slides?
Yeah. Is it part of the design? Do I need to have that as part of my design?
PowerPoint slides have gotten a bad rap. People say the death by PowerPoint. This goes back to understanding your audience, that in your audience, you're going to have visual learners and you're going to have auditory learners. There's going to be 50-50. I like to use PowerPoint if logistically it's available, because it will help to reinforce what it is that you're talking about. And in many cases, all you need is a handful of words to reinforce what you're saying. And in many cases, all you need is an image to reinforce what you're saying. So to answer your question, if you're able to use a PowerPoint, if you're comfortable using it, then use it to reinforce what it is you're saying, because those visual learners are not going to fully grasp what it is you're saying by the words alone.
That is very interesting, because I actually had someone from my audience once, and she reached out to me and she's like, because I posted a photo of me hiking to Machu Picchu and I was on the stairs. And with that photo of me trying to climb the stairs, it gave her a visualization of what that looked like. And she was able to connect that to the story that I was telling her.
Mm-hmm.
She came back to me. She's like, oh, had you not shown me that photo, I would have no idea what that looked like. But I'm glad you showed me that photo, because I was able to visualize like how difficult it was to climb those stairs.
Mm-hmm.
And so what you have just shared is valuable, because for a long time, I didn't think about that. I need to have some type of visual for the visual learners.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Can I talk to you all day long? Where can we find you, David?
Two places. One is on LinkedIn, David Doerrier, Doerrier. There you go, LinkedIn at David Doerrier. If you find a second one, let me know, because it's a very unique last name. Doerrier, you'll probably find my sisters and my brother on there, but the only David Doerrier. Definitely look for me on LinkedIn. Definitely connect with me on LinkedIn. You can find me on my website, presentyourwaytosuccess.com. There it is. presentyourwaytosuccess.com. You can also download my free ebook on the adult learning theory. And I'd love to come back and talk more about the adult learning theory, what the adult learning theory is all about. What are adults looking for to be engaged, either during training or a presentation? It's all about creating engagement. So my website or LinkedIn. And if you say, hey, I heard this and I saw you on there, Santa David, I would love to take advantage of your free complimentary 60-minute evaluation. We'll talk about presentation skills. I'm not going to be selling you on anything. If we find that you would like to continue this discussion, then we'll talk about that. But this is completely complimentary. There's the link, Calendly link. Let me know that you heard this, saw this. You connect with me on LinkedIn, and be more than happy to set up a 60-minute complimentary session. Talk about whatever it is you want to talk about, your video, whatever.
I love it. I think I'm going to take advantage of your 60 minutes, because I think I can really pick your brain on a lot of the presentation stuff, how to better myself. And any last word of advice for our audience?
Last word of advice. Number one is get out there and speak. Yes, you'll make mistakes at times. Things may not go as well as you would hope that they would go. But the thing is to just get out there, challenge yourself. Your audience wants you to be successful. If you make mistakes, then just talk about it. Say, whoops, there I go again. But you don't want to harp on it for a long period of time. So practice, practice, practice. Go to Toastmasters. That's probably the best, cheapest way where you can speak on a weekly basis and get great evaluations from folks and to practice the craft of speaking. Speaking in front of others is not normal. It's not natural. You've got to work at it and you've got to get up there and practice. It's like riding a bicycle. Yeah, you can learn the craft of riding a bicycle from a book, but if you never get on the bicycle, you're probably never going to be able to ride it. So get on that bicycle and get out there and speak.
But all I hear is practice, practice, practice. Practice makes you proficient. It doesn't make you perfect, but it makes you proficient, right? Perfection is not going to happen, but we continue to learn and there's always room to grow. And I really appreciate your time today. And you share so many golden nuggets, like more than just golden nuggets. They're like gold, pretty much. And I really just appreciate your time and your expertise of how you're helping others to make their presentation better and design their presentation better. And just really appreciate you, my fellow Toastmasters.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hey, beautiful. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast and found value from this episode, I would love for you to hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform and leave me a rating and review. One thing I was struggling in my early years in business was finding the right people to connect with. It feels like I was on this entrepreneur journey on my own. And sometimes we all just need friends who can share our dreams and hopes. Someone who can relate to what we're going through as we grow our business together. If you are a woman coach who is ready to grow your coaching business and looking for strategies to get seen, get heard, and get hired, I want to invite you to come and find me in our community on Facebook at Get Clients with Storytelling. This is a community of women coaches who want to grow a coaching business by creating engaging, visible, and authentic content with storytelling for their business to get more leads and attract more clients. I will see you at our next tea party.